This is the most important time of our church year, so why not find a way to focus on that? Why not find a way to bring our families in to that time of year in a way that's life-affirming and also truthful?
Younger kids don't know the story behind it, and they just know that Easter Bunny, Palm Sunday.
Everyone who's a part of this is just really invested. There's no one here who doesn't want to be here. It changes people.
They are visualizing it, they are experiencing the emotions, the sequence of things that took place.
People tend to not cry, but they feel touched and feel like they should change something to be better.
It brought to life the story, the passion. It made it real for our children.
Our church, as probably most churches, have a Christmas pageant, and it's, the kids dress up and they're all the different characters, and it's fun and it's wonderful and it's a lovely story. So how could we engage our community in the same way around the Passion, around a whole journey through Lent? The challenge was how to tell the story of a glorious life that ends in a horrible death. So we started thinking about a way to tell the Passion that was appropriate for all ages and hopefully worked for all ages and was also true. That's where it started. That was the genesis of it. This is a Palm Sunday presentation, and it's always pre-Mass. It's about a half an hour, and it comes before the Mass. The Palm Sunday Gospel is in it. The coming into Jerusalem is in it. The Last Supper is in it, and the Passion, Jesus' death, is in it. The day becoming night is in it. We didn't want it to just be a Passion play. We wanted it to be a project, a Lenten project for families. I just remember thinking that there could be a way to tell this story with the puppets that could work for all ages.
I grew up in the Catholic Church when we were still using Latin in the Mass, and I always have a wish to lift us into a slightly different space, And so I think puppets really do that, really can take us out of ordinary reality and bring us into an open spiritual space.
I think it really speaks to what kids can understand and what kids can handle, especially when they're younger. You can hear a story, but then to actually be a part of a story or to see the story is different. Now they want to be a part of it every year.
Well, young people tend to not pay attention during Masses. That used to be me. I would always try to distract myself and distract the people around me so I have something to do. So being able to learn the scripture while moving around really helps the younger children to learn what happened in our religion.
I think it's really a fun way to tell the story because you get to be in the play and experience it, not just watch it.
Watching the story and watching other people act with me again and again makes me just realize how much he sacrificed for us.
What Christ experienced, they will see it better than just reading it from a book or somebody on a pulpit telling them the story.
Actually, Palm Sunday was when we were first introduced to St. Joan of Arc, and our son turned to us and said, "Why are we not members here?" And so we said, this is the church for us.
Family Mass isn't just for kids, it's for families. And I think that's a gift that St. Joan of Arc really provides for families. It's also important for families' own sort of faith calendar, that every single year they look forward to this, whether in the seats or as part of it. The congregation also look forward to this, and it's an important milestone in their faith journey. So what we do is we have families commit to this whole journey. It's a journey together through Lent. So it's a journey as families, which is really very precious. It's also a journey as a community. So it's not just the kids show up and do stuff. It's not just the parents show up and do stuff. It's families show up together and do stuff. They come on 3 different Wednesday nights. We call them our build nights. And we ask the kids to build masks. And they work with Heart of the Beast artists doing this. And we ask that the mask is a reflection of God's love in the world.
We talk about the meaning that we're trying to get at with what they make in the workshops, which is kind of your best self, the essence of spirit living through you in the world.
There are things in the world that are just wrong. And Jesus came to show us a whole different way of living in the world. The stuff we were just talking about, the violence and the hate, he saw it. He refused to be part of it. But he also refused to run away from it. And that's what he's asking us to do, really. He's asking us not to be violent or hateful, but also not to run away from violence or hate. If we can help it, try to change the world, right? That's what he asks.
At the beginning of our rehearsals, we always pray, and then they tell us what we're doing that day. It's like we're all working together to create our masks, to create a beautiful mask, to put on a beautiful show.
What the masks represent in the play is our love and our will to be peaceful and follow Jesus. So they bring a lot of depth into the story.
I choose what I choose because I'm really thankful for nature and animals, and I really think that's how God shows his love.
The masks, for me, in the play, me and our love was into this. We created this by ourselves, maybe with a bit of help from our parents, but not a lot. And we did this with our own hands.
I think it's a great opportunity, and it's really fun to be able to do all this art, and I love being in the play. I think it's really fun.
I just feel like the whole thing is heightened, by the use of art. Music does it. We use art to depict God, Jesus, saints, the experience of the gospel all the time. Just to enter into a space of creativity and art, which is sort of divine, it's sort of spiritual, I think deepens our understanding and helps us approach it more with a kind of an open heart.
I think puppets are magical in that way because they show, don't tell. There are very few words, and it works for all ages. It really does.
It's a really beautiful interpretation, I think, of the story, and I think that the costumes and everyone putting their heart into it and everyone working together to bring it forth is a really important part of the telling. So I don't think there's any other way to tell it, honestly.
Everyone's involved. The story is important because we're showing our love for Jesus and that Jesus came back from the dead for us.
The story is sort of sad, but it comes out as happy because Jesus dies and the night puppet comes and it's night, but it's so meaningful at the end.
Jesus rising, and that's the happy part, but the sad part is Jesus has a humongous heart to share, and so it's really sad when he dies because basically all that love is gone and it's just darkness and his body is dead.
This particular project takes on that really difficult and ugly death, looks at it unflinchingly, in our own way. Yes, it doesn't have nails and a cross, but it does have a death. It's something we have to look at. We mostly look at Jesus' life. That's what I always want the kids to take away, is his life is what matters. We provide a safe place for families to explore some of this stuff.
It's a real story. People die. There are sad things that happen in this world, and then how do we react to that? How do we internalize that or talk about it? And so it's helped us to kind of come together and talk about that this is what happened and that sometimes people don't do good things.
We begin the play with the procession into Jerusalem. We call it Jesus Last Week. So it's the Passion with a little bit extra. And we start with the entry into Jerusalem. And the people are saying he's coming, and they're waving their palms, and they're wearing their masks, which speak of God's love in the world. And they're doing the story. They're saying, this is the guy, he's coming. There are animal puppets who also join this procession and join the whole journey. They're always sort of part of the web of creation. So that's another kind of interesting and important message that kids really do get, because they're so connected to animals. And then Jesus does a dance. It's Lord of the Dance, and Jesus shows us not just a God of love, but a God who loves life, right? So a God who so loves this world, because that is sort of Jesus' life.
I danced in the morning when the world was begun. I danced in the moon and the stars and the sun. I came down from heaven and I danced on the earth. At Bethlehem I had my birth. delightful words. I want people to be participating. I want them to be part of what I'm saying and doing. Your whole emotional self becomes involved. Not just your legs and your arms, but your whole body, your soul, your spirit.
And then we move into the Last Supper. And Jesus moves behind the altar, breaks the bread, gathers his friends around him for a final meal. The animals turn toward the altar. The Last Supper really, I think, sets off a light bulb a lot of times with kids, that suddenly they understand why the priest is raising that host, that circle, and they get the connection to communion. We're talking about ourselves being the body, that we take Jesus into ourselves and we bring Jesus out into the world. And that's what we're doing every single week. And I think our play opens kids' hearts and minds and eyes to that.
I've seen kids really just learn something and take away something, and I remember when I was little, this was something that really made me think harder about religion and like stories and my church and my community, and I've seen that in a lot of the kids around me too.
Sometimes they feel like they're like not important when their parents and the adults are talking. So this is a big way to help them like realize how they fit in and make a lot of new friends.
The place when the apostles told Christ, don't mess around with those kids. Just get them out of. Christ said, no, you bring those children to me.
And not just sit back and watch it, but to actually be a part of the story and part of the telling of the story is pretty powerful.
After the Last Supper, we do the sign of peace, just as in the Mass, and then we move into our groups for really Gethsemane, or the betrayal. And at this point, Jesus asks us to stay awake and watch with him. And the congregation feels very much a part of this, that all of this journey is our journey. And so the community basically denies Jesus by taking off their masks.
When we take off our masks, we're telling Jesus that we don't want to follow him anymore because he disappointed us. But when he dies, we show him our masks and we tell him that we're sorry and that we're willing to be loving again. And then when we hold him up at the very end walking away, it's saying sorry. But we created these for you and these will be yours forever and always.
What I want you to do is go home this week and think about what you think is just wrong with the world. What's unfair? What do you wish you could fix? Think about that. Talk about it with your parents. Next week, you're going to come in and you're going to write that on the strips, little piece of purple fabric. We're going to wear those in the play, and in the time when Jesus dies, we take our sorrows and we put them on Jesus. Jesus accepts them, and they take Jesus down. So that's what I want you to think about this week, okay? Because that's a part of Lent that we need to think about.
That Wednesday that we write our Lamentations, we write them together. And so me and my children, they go right to it and write it down. And then in the play, those same strips of cloth are being placed on Jesus's back. So it is a literal piece that kids can understand.
They say they laid their sorrows upon Jesus. Everybody writes on two of them, and you write all of your sorrows and things that make you really sad, and then in the play they just lay them on Jesus, and it's like kind of letting go of the sorrows because he took them for you.
It's basically kind of miracle that you can let your sorrows go away, because if you just let your sorrows go into you, it's basically like building up your sorrows, and then you'll be sad for the rest of your life.
But I think also kids can connect to, I wrote on one of those Lamentations, this is what I'm bringing.
Jesus turns and walks into our pain, trying to understand our pain, trying to fix our pain, trying to have us help with our pain.
Yeah, it's really intense and it's really harsh, and there's the moment where I'm a disciple this year and we actually beat Jesus to death, which is kind of insane and kind of violent and dark, but I think we do it in a way that's more meaningful. And I think the masks and the costumes and the art and the love in the performance makes it easier for children to deal with, and adults in general. I see people cry every year at every performance, but then they also are really touched and they leave different.
The congregation is really reflecting and thinking during this time because it's powerful. And with the puppets, it makes it live.
It's sad. It's a really moving play where I'm pretty sure I'm crying like every year, even in rehearsal, the dying of Jesus. I think it's a pretty introspective time. And we don't know what's going to happen next. I think that's okay too. It's okay to be with your children in that and for them to have this representation of mystery.
And then we realize what we've done, and we pick up the body of Jesus, and we're left with the body. That's all we have. And we talk about how when we take up Jesus' work, when we try to work to solve the world's problems, Jesus lives. Then we're left with that. We're left with our hands. So we paint our hands, and we make a Hands of Jesus board. You know, all our hands are all over the board, and it says, "We are the hands of Jesus." And we show that at the very end of our play, to remind us that Jesus' body isn't here, but why did he come? He came for us to take on the sorrows of the world, us to change the world with our love, to bring about the kingdom. The people stand up and raise their masks as if to recommit to being the hands of Jesus, to being God's light in the world. And they walk out. The animals have their moment of farewell. Then, as the Bible says, Jesus died, and for 3 hours, day became like night. So a huge black puppet comes, which is supposed to be night, and sort of swallows up the body as well as the whole congregation. And we're left with Jesus' words, "Be not afraid."
Well, like the night puppet is kind of a little bit scary in my opinion, but like it's telling, do not be afraid. Like no matter what, if there's darkness inside of you, just don't be afraid of it.
Jesus came back from the dead to celebrate with all of us that he saw from heaven that we regretted our choice from turning away.
Kids reassure their parents, don't worry, he's going to come back, you know, about when Jesus dies. Or even the night puppet, like, don't be afraid, they'll say to their parents.
Next week, all the animals come back, and then Jesus comes back, and it's a really beautiful reunion. And I think it helps bring the audience some closure after this performance, which was a little heavier and a little longer.
It goes through the story a little bit more slowly so that it's more palatable to kids, as well as there are some fun pieces to it, like making the masks. Thinking about, hey, how do I see God in the world? And this is how I see God in the world, and I got to make this. To think about the service night, there's a service night where they really get involved with being the hands of Christ.
It's a very organic way to come to some very deep faith truths and to come to some very deep relationships. The truth is, you don't build community in mass. You build your faith. It's very important. Hopefully you come and you're recharged to go out into the world and bring Jesus' message forth. But you don't necessarily build community. You build community by volunteering. You build community by being part of a project like this.
Some kids have grown up in this project. Started out as 4-year-olds. You know, it's been sort of something that kids have been anticipating for a few years, and they're going to keep going, you know.
I've been here since I was tall enough to look over the table.
This is your 6th creation, and you're 9 years old.
So I've gone here since I was 3.
The first year, I was pretty little, but I remember just being amazed at all of the costumes and the masks and the whole process of getting everything ready. And I just kind of fell in love with it immediately, and I've been doing it ever since. So,
you know, each year it was improved, and certain things were added. And the kids who loved it wanted to participate, so more animals were included.
This year we had a 3-year-old and we had an 89-year-old and everyone in between. There's people who year after year will come, and it's an important milestone in their faith calendar. I hope that there's a way in which this makes their faith come to life, that it really makes the stories come to life, and that it makes their faith have true meaning in their lives. And that's the goal, I think, with all of our formation. What we're creating is a prayer, and people feel that prayer.
We're talking about scripture, what we believe, and our religion. And so people are reflecting into themselves, seeing what they're doing, and see what they could change to make themselves better people.
And it feels like a good thing to do, and I love St. Joan, and I love Heart of the Beast, so it's just like everything I love in one performance, and then I get to be a part of it. It's amazing.
You know, I have felt in this project, but it feels like that's true of this church in general, is just really seeking the true expression of the divine in our everyday lives, and I love that.
Palm Sunday drew us here, and then since we've been involved in the mask making, the soup suppers, and as we've become involved, I think they've taken on a little bit more about what it actually means to be the hands of Christ. They feel like they're a part of something bigger that changes the world.
Welcome to our Palm Sunday celebration. This is the story of the last week of Jesus. Jesus turned to the crowds who had come to see him. Their excitement made him glad.
I danced in the morning when the world was begun, danced in the moon and the stars and the sun. I came down from heaven and I danced on the earth. At Bethlehem I had my birth. Dance, dance to every day. I am the Lord of the dancing. Scribes and the Pharisees, but they wouldn't dance, they wouldn't follow me. I danced for the fishermen, for James and for John. They came with me and the dance went on. So dance, dance, whoever you may be. I am the Lord of the dancing beat, and I lead you all. Wherever you may be, I'm the Lord of the dancing beat. I danced on a Friday when the sky turned black, for it's very hard to dance with the devil on your back. They buried my body and they thought I was gone, but I am the Lord and I still go on. I am the Lord of the dancing beat, and I'll lead you all wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dancing beat.
On the night before he died, Jesus gathered his friends around him to share in a Last Supper together. During the meal, Jesus taught them to remember him. Jesus took up the bread. He broke the bread, and he gave it to his friends, saying, "Take this bread and eat it. This is my body, which will be given for you." When supper was ended, Jesus took a cup of wine. He gave the cup to his friends and said, "This is the cup of my blood. Take it and drink. Whenever you gather together in my name, remember me." And Jesus spoke to his friends about peace. "I give to you my peace," he told them. "Let us rise and give to each other a sign of the peace that Jesus had within himself."
Peace before us
Please be seated. After they had shared a meal and prayed together, Jesus began to feel lonely and afraid, for he knew he had many enemies. He asked his friends to stand with him to keep away the darkness.
Stay awake and watch with me. Shine a light for all to see. Stay awake and watch with me. Shine a light for all to see.
The people had expected a great king who would come to them, a mighty warrior who would vanquish their enemies, a wealthy ruler who would bring them out of poverty. But Jesus was not a rich and powerful king. He was a humble messenger of love and peace. The people turned away from him.
Stay awake and watch with me. Shine a light for all to see. Stay awake and watch with me. Shine a light for all to see. Stay awake and watch with me. Shine a light for all to see. Stay awake and watch with me. Shine a light for all to see.
Jesus had come to take away the sorrows or the brokenness of the world. The people brought Jesus their sorrows. I am sad that we have so much food, but people still starve. I am sorry that kids don't feel safe at school. I feel sad that people don't have homes. They gathered up their sorrows and laid them upon him. I am sorry for my part in white supremacy. I feel sad when people with much do not give. I wish that we could heal our planet. I lament that refugees are turned away. I regret that so many lives are cut short by guns. People are scared. Families are split apart. Our earth is dying. Animals are killed. Children are abused. People are enslaved. Voices go unheard. Those we love have to die. Violence, hunger, racism, greed, torture, disease, hatred, war! Weighed down by the sorrows of the world, Jesus dies. But although his body is gone, everything that Jesus taught us remains. Christ has no body now but ours. When we take up his work, when we struggle for peace and for justice, when we act with love, Jesus lives.
Christ has no body now on earth but ours. Our hands are to be his hands. Our feet are to be his feet. Our eyes are now his eyes. Christ has no body now on earth but Christ has no voice now on earth but ours. Our thoughts are to be his thoughts. Our words are to be his words. Our song is now his song. Christ has no voice now on earth but Christ has no heart now on earth but ours. Our
Be not afraid.
Have a blessed, holy